This morning we are out with Steve Hall, winemaker for Robert Biale Vineyards. And Steve, for starters, tell us about the vineyard that we're in and give us a little bit of the profile and the history of this property.
We're in Bill and Margie Hart's vineyard in St. Helena. We're up on the north side on Scott. This is originally a parcel that had been established in 1871, part of a larger parcel, and we're in the quarter of it that has a Petite Syrah that was probably planted around 1900, and then we have some Zinfandel over here. This is one of our single vineyard properties. We take some of the Petite Syrah, do perhaps a co-fermentation with the Zin, but we also use the Petite for our Royal Punishers, which is a Petite Syrah blend of all these wonderful Napa Valley Petite Syrah vineyards.
I'm noticing these vines are kind of low to the ground. Tell us about that.
Well, these are the old head train system of growing, and these actually are a bit lower than you would usually find. There had been sort of a water intrusion layer, and there wasn't quite as much soil depth that was available. It kept the vines small. Since Bill has taken over, he's got a French drain moving some of the water out, and some of the Zin vines off here are a bit taller, the newer ones that are cuttings from the old vines.
Tell us about the soil and what that brings to the grape growing.
Well, we've got a wonderful mix of cobbles that and soil that have come off of Spring Mountain and the related hills around here. It isn't as fertile as some of the soils that we get that are fatter, closer to the Napa River, and the influence of the soil and the climate around here helps make a kind of a St. Helena unique Zinfandel profile, and it's the same thing you'd find with, for instance, Spotswood Cabernet and the Spotswood wineries just on the other side of this old parcel. So there's kind of a West St. Helena flavor to this, where you wind up with a fine grain tannin, bright fruit in the usually a red fruit flavor, and it's true with Zins as well as Cabernets.
We're standing here at the beginning of November. Harvest is pretty much over, so give us an early assessment of the 2011 harvest.
Well, it's I think it shows, for me, being originally a Cabernet guy, that there's some merit to these old plantings of Zinfandel and Petite Syrah. In the late spring, as we were going through flowering in this vineyard, there was a fair amount of rain off and on. The Petite Syrah and the Zin set really well. Behind me, Merlot and Cabernet suffered and did not set as well, and so economically they were not able to really bring in the type of crop that they would expect, and there wasn't really enough fruit to direct the vine to hold flavor and work on the grapes. But the Petite Syrah and the Zin that we got from these old vines and some of the newer plantings that we have wound up just being some of the I think most dynamic vineyards that we've brought in. St. Helena is a golden area, along with Rutherford, for Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you're looking at people dismissing the 2011 vintage, it was a big, complex vintage with lots of areas that did really, really well. So let's remember that 2011 has some really great wines out there potentially.
Steve, tell us a little bit about the winemaker-grower relationship, and perhaps use this vineyard as an example. How do you work together with the folks who own this property?
Well, we've got a partnership with Bill and Margie. Bill, when he took over this property, had intentionally left the old vines here. I think Mrs. Duckhorn had pleaded with him when he first bought it to have some respect for these old vines, because once they're gone, they're gone. And all the genetic information that we have, all the things that we can use for furthering some of these varieties would be lost forever. So he embarked, along with Bill Pease, to resuscitate the vineyard, and then the two of them brought Bob Biale in, and we started eventually a single vineyard bottling. The relationship with the grower as he has to love his land and he has to care about it. He can't be just an absentee grower putting it out to a management company. And it shows in the wine. We always say the vineyard gets the last vote. When you open a bottle of wine and you drink it, you're getting what the vineyard's given you.
And when it's time for harvesting from a property like this, what factors come into play for the decision making?
Way too many factors. Just way too many. It's never a perfect harvest. This certainly hasn't been since 2007, which was actually probably the first and last perfect harvest we've had. We just get our butts in the seat and drive out to the vineyards. We walk them, we taste them, we talk with the grower, we talk amongst ourselves, we decide if we want to maybe expose a little bit more fruit by taking some leaves off, or drop fruit that may be too much for the vine to fully ripen that year. And it's different every year. There's no vintage that's like any other.
But in this particular location for this year, first of all, the date of the harvest was when? Do you remember?
I should, but I would imagine it was about the 24th, 25th
in that range
of September. And
is that later, earlier?
Well, we would, when you can pretty much do a countdown for when you're going to pick based on the flowering and the set. So based on the flowering and set being in June, which was crazy, usually it would be, at the very first part of May. It was when we'd expect to go, but this was such a late year, just like last year, almost a repeat of the parameters of last year, that it was really kind of chance to learn from last year and try to incorporate some of the things. And so we were dropping a lot of fruit to be able to make to the finish line. There wasn't a lot of difference between last year and this year in terms of the quality that we got from this vineyard. The exception would be we didn't have that intense heat, so we think we have riper tannins this year. Okay.
I'm going to ask you about a subtle concept that's out there quite regularly, and I want to get your interpretation of it. And there's that whole thing about, as a winemaker, your ideal position is to be a babysitter, and just baby this thing along the way. How do you view that? There are certain years where you can truly be that, and there are certain years where you need to be more interventionist with what you're doing as a winemaker. Can you speak to that a little bit as a winemaker? And do you see the need for much of that this vintage, or is it, going to be, another way? I mean, just speak to that a little bit.
Well, I think it goes to the variability of the sites this year. There were some sites where you really could just let the voice of the vineyard speak. There were a few sites where, with the impending rain, we had to pull off some of the Zin and some of the Petit a bit earlier, a couple of days earlier than we had hoped. That's when you start thinking that you have to use some winemaking finesse. We're not the type of winery that would use tannins or enzymes or things like that, so we try to do things in a more naturalistic approach with what the grapes give us. And fortunately we have other vineyards that we can do small amounts of perhaps co-fermentation. We'll do a few other things. This year, because of the acids being intensely bright in a few vineyards, we've tried to leave them on the skins longer. The skins can help drop out and soften the acid. So we've done that. It seems to be about 75% for 3 out of 4 of the vineyards. It was the right choice, and the 4th vineyard is still really acidic, and it's not going to matter.
Sure. And one of the reasons I asked you that is because Robert Biale brand is so dependent on its vineyards, and so really it's about how you pick those vineyards that you choose to work with and what you get from them. And if you were to be looking at a brand new potential vineyard today, what are some of the characteristics that you're looking for? you know, if you had your ideal ability to just pick something, what would that vineyard be like? What would you pick?
Well, we're just in love with the volcanic soils and volcanic-based soils. We understand those pretty well, and we'd love to find something that's a little bit off the valley floor, just red, intense red soil, full of iron, and we'd look for something that you know, has a grower who's going to be able to not hog on the fruit, and is actually going to be able to understand that we need to make wine out of his grapes. And so if we wind up with that kind of you know, driving around the road and you know, suddenly see this vineyard and some guys, you know, on a tractor, and you love the vineyard, we're going to be stopping, and we'll at least talk to them and see what's up. So we do this all the time.
Mm-hmm. So you are actually all the time considering potential properties?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're just in love with Zinfandel and some of these other wonderful varieties that go with it, like Petite Syrah, you know, Carignan. We have a little patch of Tempranillo that you know, we all consider as part of a mix going into some of the Zinfandels.
Okay, wonderful. One final thing, and this is more kind of a summary situation, and that is, how much did you get from this vineyard this year? And refresh my memory once again on where the juice from these grapes go into for the program.
Okay, well, we have two different lots that we grabbed. We picked the younger vines earlier, and we had about 20 barrels of that, maybe 16. I wish I could remember. And the older part of the vineyard, which is just across the way here, we wound up with about 9 barrels. And I'll take those and rye them separately as 2 lots. And then as we get to a point where you can taste into them, probably in February, so I can really see the dimensions, I'll use all of the old vineyard and then only some of this younger vineyard to try and find something that we think represents what the Old Kraft, which is what we call this designate, what the Old Kraft would represent. And it's a moving target. It's kind of it's more an impression that we try to keep each year. So it's never said. The vineyards, even when they have certain flavors, don't always, parts of the vineyards don't always make it, and so it's up to us to sort of edit and come up with a final flavor.
Okay, wonderful. Let's go taste some wine.
Okay, thanks.